I remember the day I first suggested opening a joint account with Jake as if it were yesterday. We were lounging on our cozy couch in our small Seattle apartment, the soft rain tapping against the window, creating a soothing backdrop to our conversation. The TV was on, playing some mindless reality show, but neither of us was really paying attention. I had been mulling over the idea for weeks, turning it over in my mind like a cherished memory. "Hey, babe," I said, pausing the show and turning to him. "What do you think about us opening a joint account?" Jake looked at me, his brow furrowing slightly. "A joint account? Isn't that something couples do when they're, really serious?" I chuckled, nudging him playfully with my elbow. "Come on, we've been together for 4 years. We're practically a married couple already." He smiled, but I could see a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. I pressed on, my excitement bubbling over. "Think about it. We could save for our future together. That house we've been dreaming about, it could finally be within reach. And imagine traveling without worrying about money." As I spoke, I could see Jake's expression softening. I took his hand, feeling the calluses from his work as a software engineer. "It's our money," I said softly. "Our future." Finally, he nodded. "Okay, let's do it." I was over the moon. The next day, I rushed to the bank during my lunch break, eager to set everything up. The teller, a friendly woman named Sarah, helped me through the process. As I signed the papers, a surge of excitement coursed through me. This was it, the first step toward our shared dreams. Over the next few months, I poured my heart into saving every paycheck, meticulously budgeting our expenses, and watching our joint account grow. I felt proud imagining the life we would build together. Little did I know, the journey ahead would take a dark turn, one that would shatter my dreams and force me to confront the reality of our relationship. Life with Jake was a beautiful blend of laughter and love. We spent our weekends exploring the vibrant streets of Seattle, discovering hidden gems in the city, from quaint coffee shops to bustling farmers markets. Every outing felt like an adventure. I remember one sunny Saturday we stumbled upon a little Italian restaurant tucked away in a narrow alley. The aroma of fresh basil and garlic wafted through the air, drawing us in. We shared a plate of spaghetti, laughing and teasing each other as we twirled the noodles around our forks. In the evenings, we would often cook together, turning our tiny kitchen into a culinary playground. Jake would chop vegetables while I stirred sauces, and we'd play our favorite playlist in the background, dancing around the kitchen like we were the only 2 people in the world. Those moments felt magical, filled with the promise of a bright future. As the months passed, our joint account grew steadily. I felt a sense of accomplishment every time I checked the balance, watching it inch closer to our goal. We often talked about our dreams, buying a house with a little garden, maybe even starting a family one day. I could picture us in that house, hosting barbecues with friends, our kids playing in the backyard. The thought filled me with warmth and hope. But amidst the joy, I began to notice subtle changes in Jake. He became more reserved when it came to discussing finances. Whenever I tried to bring up our savings or future plans, he would change the subject, brushing off my concerns with a casual wave of his hand. "Don't worry about it, Lena. It's all in the account," he'd say, his tone light, but I could sense an underlying tension. I tried to shake off the nagging feeling in my gut, convincing myself that he was just busy with work. After all, he was a dedicated engineer, often putting in long hours to meet deadlines. I wanted to believe that he trusted me to handle our finances, that he was simply focused on his job. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, as we sat on the couch, I decided to confront him. "Jake, can we talk about our savings? I want to make sure we're on the same page about our goals." He looked at me, his expression shifting. "Lena, I really don't think it's a big deal. We're doing fine, right?" I nodded, but the unease lingered. I brushed it off, telling myself that every relationship has its ups and downs. We had our routines, our little rituals that made life feel normal. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. As the weeks turned into months, the initial excitement of our joint account began to fade, replaced by an unsettling tension that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I found myself checking the account balance more frequently, my heart racing each time I logged in. I wanted to see our savings grow, to feel that sense of security that came with knowing we were building a future together, but instead, I felt a growing sense of dread. One chilly evening, I decided to sit down with Jake and have a serious conversation about our finances. We had just finished dinner, and the remnants of our meal still lingered on the table. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Jake, I really think we need to talk about our savings. I want to make sure we're both aware of where we stand financially." He looked up from his phone, his brow furrowing slightly. "Lena, I told you before, it's all fine. We're saving, and that's what matters, right?" I pressed on, feeling a mix of frustration and concern. "But I want to know the details. How much have we saved? What are our goals? I just want to be on the same page." Jake's demeanor shifted. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively. "You're being a bit dramatic, don't you think? It's just money. We're fine." His dismissive tone sent a chill down my spine. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that maybe I was overreacting, but the nagging feeling in my gut persisted. I couldn't shake the thought that Jake was hiding something from me. Days turned into weeks, and I noticed more signs that something was amiss. Jake would come home late from work, often with vague excuses about meetings or deadlines. He seemed distant, lost in his own world, and I found myself feeling increasingly isolated. I tried to reach out to him, to connect, but he would often brush me off, saying he was too tired to talk. One night I decided to surprise him with a special dinner, hoping to rekindle the spark between us. I spent hours preparing his favorite meal, setting the table with candles and soft music playing in the background. When he walked in, I was filled with anticipation, but his reaction was far from what I had hoped for. "Wow, this looks great, but I'm really tired. Can we just eat and watch something?" he said, barely looking at me. Disappointment washed over me, but I forced a smile. "Of course, let's just enjoy the evening together." As we sat down to eat, I couldn't shake the feeling that our relationship was slipping through my fingers. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, but the cracks were starting to show. I felt like I was living in a bubble, and the reality outside was beginning to intrude. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in my mind. I felt a mix of sadness and frustration. I loved Jake, but I couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. I needed to know the truth, and I was determined to find out what was really going on. It was a chilly Friday evening when everything changed. I remember the sounds of the city outside, the distant hum of traffic mingling with the soft patter of rain against the window. I had just finished a long week at work and was looking forward to a quiet night in with Jake. I had planned to review our finances and maybe even start looking at houses online. The smell of the lasagna I had put in the oven filled the apartment, a comforting aroma that usually brought us together. As I settled down at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and my laptop, I felt a surge of excitement. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to take control of our future. I logged into our joint account, ready to see how much we had saved, but when the screen loaded, my heart sank. The balance that should have been in the 5 figures was now a shocking $200. I expected to feel an inviting bliss of self-improvement, no an amoeba. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. I refreshed the page, logged out and back in, but the number didn't change. Panic set in and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. This couldn't be happening. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking as I tried to call Jake. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, leaving increasingly frantic messages. "Jake, please call me back. There's something wrong with our account. I need to talk to you." Hours passed, and the lasagna burned in the oven, filling the apartment with a bitter smell. I barely noticed. I was too focused on the computer screen, willing the numbers to change, praying for my worst fears to be unfounded. When I finally heard the key in the lock, I jumped up, my heart racing. Jake walked in, looking as carefree as ever, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Hey, Lena, what's for dinner?" he asked. his voice light. "Mark," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "I checked our account. There's no money left. The entire account is empty." The carefree look on his face vanished, replaced by a mix of anger and something I had never seen before. Defiance. "Are you seriously accusing me of something?" He spat, his voice rising. "How dare you talk to me about money like I'm irresponsible?" Before I could react, before I could even process what was happening, he struck me hard in the stomach. The force of it knocked the wind out of me and I crumpled to the floor, gasping for air. Jake loomed over me, his face contorted with rage. "I spent it on my family. They deserved a trip of a lifetime, and guess what? I'll spend it how I like. You don't control me." He stepped over me like I was nothing more than a piece of furniture, slamming the door behind him as he left. I lay there on the cold tile floor, struggling to breathe, my mind reeling from what had just happened. The dream of togetherness I had held on to so tightly shattered in an instant, leaving me alone with the bitter taste of betrayal and the harsh reality of what our relationship had become. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the apartment, reverberating through my very bones. I couldn't move, the physical pain from Jake's blow intense, but it paled in comparison to the emotional agony that engulfed me. I finally managed to push myself up into a sitting position, leaning against the kitchen cabinets, the reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. The man I loved, the man I had trusted with my heart and my future, had not only stolen from me, but had physically attacked me. The betrayal was profound, all-encompassing, and I felt as if I was drowning in it. I don't know how long I sat there, arms wrapped around my knees, rocking back and forth. The lasagna I had put in the oven earlier was now a charred mess, its acrid smell filling the apartment. It seemed oddly fitting. Another dream turned to ashes. As the shock began to wear off, a whirlwind of emotions flooded through me. Anger, fear, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of shame. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? The evasiveness when I tried to talk about money, the occasional flashes of temper I had brushed off as stress from work, it all seemed so obvious now. In hindsight, I finally managed to stand, wincing at the pain in my abdomen, and stumbled to the bathroom. Lifting my shirt, I inspected the damage. A large, angry bruise was already forming, a physical reminder of the emotional wounds inflicted that night. As I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I hardly recognized the person looking back at me. My eyes were red and puffy from crying, my face pale with shock. This broken, betrayed woman couldn't be me, could it? But it was. As I stood there meeting my own gaze in the mirror, something shifted inside me. A spark of defiance ignited, small at first but growing stronger with each passing moment. I had done nothing wrong. I had loved, trusted, and worked hard for our future. Jake was the one who had betrayed that trust, who had thrown away our dreams for his own selfish desire. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone. I had several missed calls from work, reminders of a late-night meeting I had completely forgotten about. There were also a few texts from friends asking if Jake and I wanted to meet up for drinks later. The normalcy of these messages felt surreal in the face of how drastically my life had changed in the last few hours. I thought about calling someone, my best friend, Maya, or maybe my sister, but what would I say? How could I possibly explain what had happened when I could barely understand it myself? The shame welled up again, threatening to overwhelm me. What would they think of me? Would they blame me for not seeing this coming? Instead, I found myself opening the banking app again, staring at that damning balance of $200. Swallowing hard, I started scrolling through the transaction history. There it was, a series of large withdrawals over the past month, culminating in one final massive transfer that had drained the account completely. Each transaction felt like a fresh betrayal, a testament to how thoroughly Jake had deceived me. As I looked at the dates of the withdrawals, memories surfaced. The day of the largest withdrawal coincided with the evening Jake had come home late, full of apologies and bearing an expensive bouquet of roses. "Just because I love you," he had said. Now I understood. It had been a distraction, a way to keep me from checking the account. Another withdrawal lined up with the weekend he had insisted on a spontaneous road trip. We had driven up to a quaint bed and breakfast, and he had been unusually extravagant, ordering the most expensive wines and suggesting activities that were normally out of our budget. At the time, I had been thrilled, seeing it as a romantic gesture. Now, the memory was tainted. Another calculated move in his grand deception. The more I delved into the transaction history, the more my anger grew. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. This was calculated long-term fraud. Jake had been systematically stealing from me, from us, for months. And all the while, he had played the role of the loving partner perfectly. A new thought struck me, sending a chill down my spine. What if this had been his plan all along? Had our entire relationship been a lie? I thought back to the early days when we first met at a mutual friend's barbecue. Jake had been charming, attentive, always saying the right things. Had it all been an act? A long con with the end goal of taking my money? No, I couldn't believe that. The man I fell in love with, the one who held me when I cried over losing my job, the partner who nursed me through a brutal bout of flu. He had to have been real, didn't he? But then again, I never would have believed that the Jake I knew could do this either. Doubt crept in, coloring every memory, every moment we had shared. The first kiss in the park, the nights spent planning our future, the lazy Sunday mornings making pancakes together. Had it all been a lie? The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my chest as I sat on the bathroom floor, my phone clutched tightly in my hand. I knew I needed to reach out to someone, to share the burden of what I was going through, but the thought of explaining everything to Maya or my sister felt daunting. How could I possibly articulate the chaos swirling in my mind? After what felt like an eternity, I finally mustered the courage to call Maya. The phone rang, each tone echoing my anxiety. When she picked up, her cheerful voice felt like a lifeline. "Hey, Lena, what's up?" "Maya, I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" My voice trembled, betraying the calm facade I was trying to maintain. "Of course. Is everything okay?" she asked, concern creeping into her tone. "No, not really. Can we just meet at our usual spot?" I replied, my heart racing. "Sure, I'll be there in 20, she said, and I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and dread. I took a moment to collect myself, splashing cold water on my face and trying to calm the storm inside me. I needed to be strong, to convey the gravity of the situation without falling apart. As I dressed, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe sharing my story would help me make sense of it all. When I arrived at the cafe, the familiar scent of coffee and pastries enveloped me, but I felt detached from it all. Maya was already seated at our usual table, her brow furrowed in concern as she spotted me. "Lena, what's wrong?" she asked, standing to give me a quick hug. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "I don't even know where to start," I admitted, sliding into the chair across from her. "Just tell me what happened," she urged gently, her eyes locked onto mine, ready to listen. I recounted the events of the past few days, the missed calls, the bruises, the shocking discovery of our empty bank account. As I spoke, I could see the shock and disbelief wash over her face. "I can't believe he did that to you," she said, her voice low and filled with empathy. "You deserve so much better, Lena." Tears welled in my eyes as I continued, sharing the memories that now felt tainted by betrayal. "I thought we were building a life together. I thought he loved me," I said, my voice breaking. "But now I feel like I don't even know who he is." Maya reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "You're not alone in this. You have me, and I'll help you through it. Have you thought about what you want to do next?" I shook my head, feeling lost. I don't know. Part of me wants to confront him, to demand answers, but another part of me is terrified of what he might do. Maybe it's time to think about your safety first, Maya suggested. You deserve to feel secure, both physically and emotionally. Have you considered talking to someone professionally? A therapist could help you process everything. The idea of therapy had crossed my mind, but I had brushed it off, thinking I could handle it on my own. But now, hearing Maya's suggestion, it felt like a lifeline. I think I might need that, I admitted, feeling a sense of relief at the thought of having someone to guide me through this turmoil. Good. And remember, you're strong. You've always been strong, she said, squeezing my hand. You'll get through this, and I'll be right here with you. As we talked, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had a friend who believed in me, who would stand by my side as I navigated the storm ahead. The road to healing would be long and painful, but I was ready to take the first step. The next few days passed in a blur of emotions. I spent hours researching therapists, trying to find someone who could help me untangle the mess that had become my life. Maya checked in regularly, offering her unwavering support and reminding me that I wasn't alone. But despite her encouragement, I still felt a gnawing. Finally, I decided it was time. I needed answers and I needed to reclaim my power. I texted Jake, asking him to meet me at the cafe where we had shared so many happy moments. My heart raced as I hit send, a mix of fear and determination coursing through me. When the day arrived, I arrived early, my stomach churning with nerves. I ordered a coffee, trying to steady my shaking hands. The cafe was bustling with life, but I felt like I was in a bubble, isolated from the world around me. Jake walked in, looking as casual as ever, but I could see the tension in his posture. He spotted me and approached, a forced smile on his face. "Hey, Lena, what's up?" "Thanks for coming," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." He nodded, his expression shifting to one of concern. "Sure, what's going on?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I found out about the money, Jake. Our account is empty, and I know you've been making large withdrawals without telling me." His face hardened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of anger in his eyes. "You're overreacting. It's just money. I told you I was handling it." "Handling it?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You've been lying to me. You've taken our savings without my knowledge. How could you do this?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively. "You don't understand. I was trying to help my family. They needed it more than we do." "Help your family?" I echoed, incredulous. "By stealing from me? You could have talked to me about it. We could have figured something out together." Jake's expression shifted again, this time to one of frustration. "You wouldn't have understood. You're so focused on your career and your plans that you can't see the bigger picture." I felt a surge of anger. "The bigger picture? You mean your selfish desires? You've betrayed my trust, Jake. You've hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "And then there's the physical violence. You hit me, Jake. That's not something I can overlook." His eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse, but it quickly vanished, replaced by defensiveness. "I was angry. You pushed me to that point." "No. You chose to hurt me," I said firmly, my voice steady. "I won't let you manipulate me anymore. I deserve better than this." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between the man I once loved and the person he had become. But I knew I couldn't wait for him to change. I had to take control of my life. "I'm done, Jake," I said, my voice unwavering. "I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me or our relationship. I need to focus on healing and rebuilding my life." He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. "No more excuses. I'm walking away, and I won't look back." With that, I stood up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I had taken a stand for myself, and it felt liberating. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was leaving behind a chapter of my life that had been filled with love and laughter. but also betrayal and pain. Outside, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the path ahead. I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth on my skin. I was ready to embrace the future, no matter how uncertain it might be. In the days following my confrontation with Jake, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. There were moments of relief, but they were often overshadowed by waves of sadness and uncertainty. I had made the right decision, but the reality of being alone was daunting. I spent hours reflecting on my life, my choices, and the person I wanted to become. Maya was my rock during this time. She encouraged me to focus on self-care and to seek therapy, which I finally did. My first session was nerve-wracking. I sat in the therapist's office, fidgeting with my hands, unsure of how to begin. But as I spoke about my experiences, the weight of my emotions began to lift. "Lena, it's important to remember that you are not defined by what happened to you," my therapist, Dr. Harris, said gently. "You are strong, and you have the power to reclaim your narrative." Her words resonated with me. I realized that I had spent too long feeling like a victim, allowing Jake's actions to dictate my self-worth. I needed to shift my focus from the pain of the past to the possibilities of the future. Over the next few weeks, I committed to my healing journey. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto the pages. It became a safe space for me to express my anger, sadness, and hopes. I also began to explore new hobbies, painting, yoga, and even cooking new recipes. Each activity helped me reconnect with myself, reminding me of the joy that existed outside of my relationship with Jake. Maya and I spent more time together, going on hikes and visiting local art galleries. I found solace in nature, the fresh air and beautiful landscapes providing a much-needed escape from the chaos of my thoughts. With each passing day, I felt a little stronger, a little more like myself. One evening, as I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, I reflected on how far I had come. The bruise on my abdomen had faded, but the emotional scars were still healing. I knew it would take time, but I was determined to move forward. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, love, and the importance of self-respect. As I continued my therapy sessions, I began to set boundaries for myself. I realized that I needed to prioritize my well-being above all else. I started to distance myself from toxic relationships, including those who questioned my decisions or tried to minimize my experiences. I surrounded myself with supportive friends who uplifted me and encouraged my growth. One day, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a quote that struck a chord. "Healing is not linear." It was a reminder that there would be ups and downs, but each step I took was part of my journey. I embraced the idea that it was okay to have bad days, as long as I kept moving forward. Eventually, I decided to take a leap of faith and sign up for a local art class. I had always loved painting, but had put it aside during my relationship with Jake. The first class was intimidating, but as I picked up the brush and let my creativity flow, I felt a sense of liberation. Each stroke on the canvas was a release, a way to express the emotions I had bottled up for so long. As the weeks turned into months, I began to see the world through a new lens. I was no longer the broken woman who had been betrayed. I was a survivor, a warrior on a path to rediscovery. I learned to celebrate my small victories, whether it was completing a painting or simply getting out of bed on a tough day. I knew the journey ahead would still have its challenges, but I was ready to face them head-on. I had reclaimed my power, and with it I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it may hold. As spring blossomed around me, I felt a renewed sense of hope and possibility. The days grew longer, and the warmth of the sun seemed to mirror the light returning to my life. I had spent months focusing on healing, and now I was ready to embrace new beginnings. With Maya's encouragement, I decided to host a small gathering at my apartment. It was a way to reconnect with friends and celebrate the progress I had made. I spent the day preparing, cooking a few of my favorite dishes, and decorating the space with fresh flowers. As I arranged the table, I felt a sense of excitement bubbling within me. This was my space, my life, and I was ready to share it with those who mattered most. When the evening arrived, my friends filled the room with laughter and warmth. We shared stories, reminisced about old times, and celebrated the present. I felt a sense of belonging that I hadn't experienced in a long time. Surrounded by love and support, I realized how far I had come from the darkness of my past. As the night wore on, I found myself in a deep conversation with Maya. "You've really transformed, Lena," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "I can see the strength in you now. It's inspiring." "Thank you, Maya. I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling a wave of gratitude. "You've been my anchor through all of this." After everyone left, I took a moment to reflect on the evening. I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had surrounded myself with positivity, and it felt incredible. I knew that I was ready to take the next step in my journey. A few days later, I received an email from the local community center about an upcoming art exhibition. They were looking for submissions from local artists, and I felt a spark of inspiration. I had been painting regularly, pouring my emotions onto the canvas, and now I had the opportunity to share my work with others. With a mix of excitement and nerves, I decided to submit a piece that represented my journey of healing. It was a vibrant painting filled with colors that symbolized hope, resilience, and the beauty of new beginnings. I titled it "Rising from the Ashes," a nod to the transformation I had undergone. As I clicked send on the submission, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was a leap of faith, a chance to put myself out there and embrace my passion. I knew that regardless of the outcome, this was a significant step in reclaiming my identity. Weeks passed, and I continued to focus on my art and personal growth. I attended therapy regularly, where I learned to navigate my emotions and set healthy boundaries. I also began volunteering at a local shelter, helping those in need. It was a humbling experience that reminded me of the importance of community and compassion. Then, one afternoon, I received an email that made my heart race. My painting had been accepted into the exhibition. I could hardly believe it. I felt a mix of joy and disbelief, knowing that my work would be showcased for others to see. It was a validation of my journey, a testament to the strength The night of the exhibition arrived, and I stood nervously in front of my painting, surrounded by a crowd of art enthusiasts. As people admired my work, I felt a sense of pride swell within me. I had taken a risk, and it had paid off. I was no longer defined by my past. I was an artist, a survivor, and a woman who had reclaimed her life. As the evening unfolded, I engaged in conversations with fellow artists and attendees, sharing my story and the inspiration behind my painting. I felt a sense of connection and community that I had longed for. It was a reminder that I was not alone in my journey. There were others who had faced their own struggles and emerged stronger. As I left the exhibition that night, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength to face it head on. My journey of healing was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to write the next chapter of my life, one filled with hope, creativity, and endless possibilities. The success of the art exhibition ignited a fire within me. I felt invigorated, as if I had finally stepped into my own skin after years of feeling lost. The experience not only validated my artistic abilities, but also reinforced my belief in the power of resilience. I was ready to embrace change and explore new opportunities. In the weeks that followed, I dedicated more time to my art. I set up a small studio in my apartment, filling it with canvases, paints, and brushes. Each stroke of the brush became a form of therapy, a way to express the emotions I had bottled up for so long. I experimented with different styles and techniques, allowing my creativity to flow freely. Maya continued to be my biggest supporter, often joining me in the studio. We would spend hours painting, laughing, and sharing our dreams. One evening, as we worked side by side, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Lena, you should consider starting an online shop for your art. There are so many people who would love to have your work in their homes." The idea took root in my mind. I had always dreamed of sharing my art with a wider audience, but self-doubt had held me back. "Do you really think so?" I asked, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Absolutely. You have a unique voice, and your art tells a story. It deserves to be seen," she encouraged. With her support, I began researching how to set up an online shop. I spent hours learning about photography, marketing, and e-commerce platforms. It was a steep learning curve, but I was determined to make it work. I wanted to create a space where my art could inspire others, just as it had helped me heal. After weeks of hard work, I finally launched my online shop. I felt a rush of exhilaration as I clicked the Publish button. My heart raced as I shared the link with friends and family, eager to see their reactions. The first few days were slow, but I remained hopeful. I knew that building an audience would take time. One afternoon, as I was checking my shop, I noticed a notification that made my heart skip a beat. I had made my first sale. A woman from across the country had purchased one of my paintings. I couldn't believe it. The realization that someone appreciated my work enough to buy it filled me with joy and validation. As the weeks turned into months, my online shop began to gain traction. I received positive feedback from customers, and my paintings found homes in various states. Each sale felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was on the right path. I also started sharing my creative process on social media, connecting with other artists and art enthusiasts. The community I found online was incredibly supportive, and I felt a sense of belonging that I had longed for. Despite the progress I was making, I still had moments of doubt. Occasionally, I would find myself reflecting on my past with Jake, the pain of betrayal creeping back in. But I had learned to acknowledge those feelings without letting them consume me. I reminded myself of how far I had come and the strength I had discovered within. One evening, as I sat in my studio surrounded by my paintings, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had transformed my pain into something beautiful, and I was finally living life on my own terms. I was no longer defined by my past. I was an artist, a survivor, and a woman who had embraced change. As I looked around at my creations, I realized that each piece represented a chapter of my journey, a testament to my resilience and growth. I was excited about the future, ready to explore new horizons and continue my artistic journey. With each brushstroke, I was not just creating art, I was reclaiming my life, one canvas at a time.